Hello everyone, I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today we are going to talk about some tough love on how to write a novel. So first and foremost, I want to put a disclaimer on this video that I do not have the intent of discouraging anyone from beginning their writing journey, okay? Writing is wonderful, and honestly, anyone can write. Kind of like the whole Ratatouille, anyone can cook. Anyone can write. Anyone can create a wonderful story. However, not everyone is willing to put in the time and effort it takes to make that wonderful story happen. So, we're going to talk about that today. Now, what exactly prefaced this video? In particular, this video is for all of the people who regularly will talk about how someday they want to write a novel, especially people that, I'm not really sure what causes this trend, but a lot of people talk about that they want to write a novel when they retire, that's their big thing, is that when they retire they're going to write this novel. Or some people will even take a sabbatical or take some sort of like gap year or something like that, where they're like, I'm going to do X and write a novel. And of course, as I said with my disclaimer, all of that is valid and all of that is great, and if that is your plan, I wish you all of the best. I really truly do, from the bottom of my heart, so please make no mistake on that. What this video is that I want to set up expectations for y'all. There is a very big difference between people like me, where you have known either your entire life that you're a writer, or you have known for a very large portion of your life that you're a writer, and not only that, but you have actively been a writer for the entirety of your life, or for a big chunk of your life, that you're actually going out there and making the effort. And then the people where this is this pie in the sky dream that they want to do, but for whatever reason in their current circumstances are not able to do, and they have to wait until X, Y, and Z in order to make that dream happen. There's a very big difference between those two groups of people. With people like me, where I have known that I'm a writer literally my entire life. I've been creating stories ever since I was a very young child. We're talking like 3 years old. As an elementary school kid, when I would come home from school, my jam was to sit down and write little stories in my notebook. I was writing novels by the time I was 12. I was publishing books in my 20s. I am a writer. I have always been a writer. It's just who I am. I live and breathe this every day of my life. And so many other people are on the same path as me, even if you're not published yet. Just doing the work and doing the writing on a regular basis makes you a writer. As for the people that, someday I want to write a novel. When I retire, I'm going to write a novel. When I do this, I'm going to write a novel. That is a completely different perspective, and that comes with its own unique set of challenges that somebody like me or people in my camp are not really going to have to deal with the way that you are. One of the biggest things is the expectations. So something that I've come across with a lot of these kind of people that I've talked to, and yes, some of these people have been close family members, and when they say that to me, I have to kind of smile and nod and be like, okay, yay, you do that. And not in a condescending way. It's just kind of, oh boy, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into, you sweet summer child. Because it's a lot, y'all. Writing is a lot. So many people think, and I know this sounds oversimplified, but the sad thing is that so many people, these are their expectations, is they think, okay, all I have to do is get to this point in my life where I can just sit and be alone somewhere and just write all day until I have somehow magically churned out an entire novel, and then I just ship that novel off somewhere, and then it gets published, and then I get tons of money and I live happily ever after the end. That is literally what a lot of these people, their expectations are for how this works. And I am here to say that is how none of that works. I'm really sorry, but that is not how any of that works. And I say this with all the love in my heart, this is why so many people get discouraged and don't pursue writing or give up on writing, is because it's really hard, and that is not how any of that works. If that was all it took, I mean, everybody would be a writer, honestly. Everyone would have published books. It would be amazing. And honestly, I'm here for that because I think stories belong in the world, and I think people have so many different perspectives and stories to share, and it would be beautiful. But unfortunately, that is not how our world works. So we have to work in the capacity of how the world works. And I have discussed in great detail in my other videos how that world does actually work. How to be a published author, whether it's you want to pursue a path in traditional publishing or you want to self-publish. I have also broken down in several videos how exactly to go about your writing process in terms of how to outline a novel, how to go through editing, how to market your novel, how to reach out to publishers. Just there's so many different steps in this entire process, and most people are not aware of all of those steps. And as I said, I cover all of those in great detail in my other videos. This is going to be more of a general overview video. So be sure to check out my other videos on this channel if you're looking for more information on those specific different parts of the process. The next expectation that I really want to break down for y'all is that so many of you think that in order to write a novel that you have to have this big chunk of time in order to do it, and you also need a very specific place to be able to do it. So again, this is something that personally annoys me and a lot of other writers, is this whole weird stereotype that Hollywood has created that, mind you, is so not realistic, is that writers are these magical people who have these big, beautiful cabins like in the middle of the woods, or like, you know, on the side of a lake, or just, you know, overlooking some sort of majestic piece of land, and is so far away from all of society, and we're all by ourselves, and we're just dippity-dap sitting here on our typewriter or computer, just doopity-doo writing all day, and, you know, sipping our coffee in the morning and sipping our whiskey at night, and ooh, I'm a writer, and ooh-doo-doo. A very small percentage of us live that way. That is not the norm. The norm is that there are writers who are single moms juggling a full-time job and juggling their kids, and then when all their kids have gone to bed for the night, they squeeze in an hour of writing, probably in a little closet somewhere where they can finally have 5 minutes peace. Or they're a student and they want to write at the same time as getting their degree, and they're squeezing in a few lines here and there between doing homework assignments. They're, you know, the guy that's working 2 jobs in order to support his family, but it's also his dream to write a novel, and you know what? When he's on his break for this job or that job, he's pulling out that little notebook from his pocket and writing down ideas and thoughts here and there. That is the reality of being a writer. Is even for people like myself, where I am able to devote huge chunks of my daily life to writing, which is what has led to me being able to write all these books, even so, you still have to balance so many other things with your writing. It is so not realistic for writers to have any sort of capacity of, I literally just wake up and I write and then I go to bed and repeat, and that's all I do. I'd say only the super famous writers have the capacity to have that kind of lifestyle, and I can guarantee you that's not what they do. There are other things that they also do with their time. And one of the important things that people realize rather quickly is that you're going to suffer from burnout, you're going to suffer from distraction, and you're going to suffer from boredom if you think that that's a realistic way to operate. Is that, yeah, you know what? It can be really helpful to have a few days here and there where you literally just sit and write and you don't have to do anything else that day. And those days are so awesome and so precious. But as an everyday thing, it's not realistic. Even if you have the capacity to do that, your brain is going to hate you and you're going to get writer's block, and it's not going to work. And the reason for that is because of your creative wellspring. Whether you want to consider it a well or a battery or however, whatever analogy you want to use for filling that creative inspiration, you can't just sit there and keep taking and taking and taking and expecting it to magically recharge or refill itself. You have to do other stuff in order to refill your inspiration and your creativity. That's why a lot of writers oftentimes have other stuff that they do. Me personally, I'm also an artist. I also really love drawing and painting. And I oftentimes switch off between those two things, where you'll see there'll be a significant time period that I read a lot of stuff, and then I stop, and then I spend a significant amount of time drawing and painting, and I keep that cycle. And the reason for that is that they recharge each other for me. And because I'm switching my brain to do something else creative, I'm able to recharge that well so that I'm not just sitting there and scraping the bottom of the barrel trying to force more story to happen. That's why it's also important as a writer to also be a reader, to read other books, if not for at least the very selfish purpose of gaining inspiration and insight from other books in order to help nourish your writing. It's also why other writers will have other things like music or gardening, or even something as simple as just spending time with friends and family, just literally doing anything but writing. It's important to do those things. You need that time off. You need that time to be able to refill your well. You need that time for your brain to rest. Because there's also it's called the shower theory, where you oftentimes get your best ideas when you're standing there in the shower or when you're just about to fall asleep, because that's when your brain has basically shut off the front part of it, where it's all these thoughts of, oh, I have to do this and I have to do that, and I'm problem solving, I'm trying to figure out all this stuff, and you're just kind of in the moment. You're just kind of relaxing, you're letting your brain wander, just not really thinking about anything in particular, and then suddenly your brain's like, aha, I have an idea. I have solved this plot hole. What if the character does this? All those sort of things. You have to give yourself the ability to have those moments. And you can't have those moments if you're like, I am writing machine. I'm just going to sit here and write all day and not do anything else. That is also why that stereotype does not work, is it does not afford for you to go out and interact with other people and do other things. The next part of the stereotype that I'm going to break down is that people are like, well, you just have to write a story. How hard can that be? Oh, my dear child, it can be very hard. It can truly be very hard, and you will find out very quickly how hard it can be. Again, I say this with all the love in my heart and not with any sort of sarcasm or disdain. It's just that so many people think that just because they have an idea, that somehow bringing that idea to fruition is easy. And it's not. And it doesn't matter what medium you're working in, whether you're a writer or an artist or a musician or a dancer or whatever. There's a huge difference between idea and end execution. And that's important to remember, so that when you're struggling with writer's block, or when you're struggling to just sit and construct the story, that you're not a failure. I get that a lot, where a lot of first-time writers will sit down and they'll have this period of being very excited, and I have this idea, and it's going, and it's happening, and then they hit that wall. And then they don't know what to do, and they feel like a failure, and a lot of times they give up. And that's the key part of this process, is you can't give up when you hit that wall. You have to pick yourself up and be like, okay, we hit that wall. I don't really know where to go from here. I don't know the next step in this process. And it's at that point why it's important to really connect with a writing community, which I talk about in some of my other videos, that you need to surround yourself with other people who are doing this process too, and to also get advice from people who are actually experienced with this, so that they can help you through that process and give you tips and workshopping ideas so that you can learn how to deal with that, because that is just going to happen over and over and over again. It's not just one wall that you climb over it and then it's, home free the rest of the way. No, you're going to keep hitting those walls. They're going to keep coming at you. That's just part of the process, and you have to figure out how to climb over the wall, or walk around the wall, or break the wall down, or turn around and start over, or go a completely different path. Learning those strategies is a big part of being a writer. It's not easy, it's not straightforward, it has a lot of roadblocks, and you're going to learn a lot. The next part of the stereotype that I'm going to break down for y'all is this weird expectation that people have, where they think it's this very easy linear journey of, I write the book, I send it somewhere, and it gets published, and then money happens. And something that you have to consider is that, one, you might not be able to finish your book. And again, that's not a failure. It's okay There are so many writers, myself included, where we have abandoned projects, where we love this idea, we love it so much, and we want so much to see this idea grow to fruition. And then along the way, we realize, for whatever reason, that it's not viable. That, you know what, this idea is wonderful and I love it, but it is never going to be a book. And that's okay. And that's part of the process, is you have to accept those failed stories for what they are. And whether you have other stories you want to write, or that was your one idea, you have to just accept that, you know what, you did the process and be proud of that. That, you know what, you did this attempt and it's wonderful work, but that's all it will be. And then 2, this whole idea of you just ship it off into the abyss and it gets magically published, that is a whole other part of the process. Like, you think writing the book was hard. Getting your book published is even harder. And I have several videos on how exactly to even get started with that. It is a whole process. It takes years to get published. Like, we're talking, you already finished the book, maybe you spent years writing it. Now on top of that, it's going to take years to publish it. Whole other part of the process. Really difficult. Essentially like winning the lottery, getting published, especially depending on what level of publishing house you're going for. And then last but not least, the expectation of that once you do get over that hurdle, and congratulations, you got your book published. Oh my God, amazing. Go you. This whole idea of then you magically make tons of money. And I'm really sorry to say, 90%, probably more than that, of us authors do not make a lot of money. Most of us, our books do not make enough money for us to live on. Most of us have other means of income, whether it's having a day job or having other freelance work that we do, or a lot are teachers. Most of us don't make enough money off of our books to make a decent living, let alone being ridiculously rich. And then again, that's because the media oftentimes only promotes the writers that are at that level. And again, you have to think of them as like celebrities or the 1%. They do not make up the majority. They are the upper echelon of specialness. People like Stephen King or Stephanie Meyer or He Who Shall Not Be Named, all those people. They got really lucky. Because not only do they have multiple books under their belts, but the fact that also they got really lucky that they got represented by big-time publishing houses that have the kind of marketing pool to make them a big deal. And then the fact that on top of it, it's not even necessarily the books that made them ridiculously wealthy, but it's all the other stuff on top of it. The fact that they also have brand deals, the fact that their books get made into TV series or movies, the fact that they have merch, all of that stuff attached to their books, all of that is what made them ridiculously wealthy. Just publishing a book is not going to make you ridiculously wealthy. So just take those expectations and completely throw them out the window. Now, if you somehow get super lucky where that happens to you, like, yay you. And I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just highly improbable. So definitely don't see writing and publishing your novel as some sort of like backup plan for your life, because that's a good way to really mess up your life. Don't do that. Please don't do that. And yes, I have met people who have done that, where they just up and quit their job and then think they're going to write a novel and get rich. And it's like, you're going to have a bad time. You're going to have a really bad time. Please don't do that. And with that, you're also putting these really horrible expectations on the entire process of that then your end goal is to make lots of money and fix your life. And that is the wrong way to go about this process. You're going to have a terrible time, and you're probably going to end up giving up and feeling like a failure before the book is even completed, because you are going about this from completely the wrong way. If you have a dream to write a book, have that be the sole motivation for why you want this book out there. It's all about the book. It's all about the story and the book and nothing else. And if you garner any sort of money or success or attention, that is a bonus. But first and foremost, your priority should be making that book be a book and getting your story out there. If you do that, you have the best chance possible for not only finishing the book, but getting the book published and maybe getting some decent sales out of it. If you go into it with, I'm gonna be rich, I guarantee you the failure rate is going to be astronomical because you're going to put undue pressure on yourself. You're going to get very frustrated at every little stumble you make, and you're going to be disappointed with every step of the process, with it's not going fast enough, you're not making enough money, and of course I'm sure there's some sort of looming deadline in terms of finances with I have these bills I need to pay, I have this lifestyle I need to upkeep, and I'm not where I need to be in order to make that happen. And that's just a whole lot of stress you don't need to put on yourself. So please, 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 I beg you, don't do that. It's a terrible idea. Being an author is not a get-rich-quick plan, ever, in the history of ever. Don't. My last tough love advice that I really need to give to y'all who are first-time writers. Please respect the writers in your life. So, for instance, if you have a family member or a friend or a colleague who is a writer or who has published a book and is a part of that industry, please respect them. That means do not put expectations on that person in order to help your book be successful. And while yes, as I said earlier, it's important to have support for you and the process in the book, that is different than putting expectations on an outside person in order to determine the completion and success of your book. Those are two different things. Having support means having people in your corner that support you, that support the journey, that, want you to succeed and possibly want to give you tools to help you succeed. However, when you expect that person to give you the tools to succeed, when you expect that person to go out of their way to help you, and you expect that person to somehow help you magically get published, aka writing on someone's coattails, expecting somebody to put their relationship with their publisher or their editor or their agent at risk, all that kind of stuff, don't do that, because that's a really good way to mess up a relationship with somebody. And honestly, it's probably not going to win you any favors in the writing community at large either. So respect the existing writers in your life. And yes, they're likely going to be happy to help you if they have some sort of relationship with you and that they want you to succeed. And they might help you in some sort of capacity. But expecting them to basically, they paved the way and you just want to walk on through is a really bad look. Don't do that. Writing and being an author is a really challenging process, and thinking that you can somehow bypass those difficulties is incredibly selfish. Unfortunately, I have had people in my life who have done that to me, where they think that because they think that I'm a writer and I have had books published, that they can just hand me a manuscript and they're like, here you go, and expect me to do all the hard work for them of presenting that to a publisher or helping them be self-published on Amazon or, insert whatever here, that they think that they can just hand it off to me and then I will just magically do the rest for them, is super rude and not okay. And as a side note, another expectation that a lot of first-time writers don't have is that they think that all they have to do is complete their rough draft and then their story is done. And they do zero editing. They don't do any editing themselves. They don't hire an editor. They don't get beta readers. They don't have any outside input. You have to have outside input. You have to edit your story. You can't just hand your writer friend or a publisher or an agent just complete rough draft nonsense and expect something to happen other than a no thank you or a rejection letter. Don't do that. A lot of people do that. It's shocking how many people do that. You have to polish your work. And expecting your writer friends to do it for you is really rude. Now, if somebody is willing to do it for you, whether it's because of the relationship or they expect some sort of compensation or whatever, that's between y'all. But consider that a gift, that they are offering their time and their effort, regardless of whether or not compensation is involved. That is a gift, and treat it as such. Do not treat it as an expectation, because that's a good way to destroy that relationship. Those are my main points of tough love that I wanted to share with those of you who are first-time writers and novelist hopefuls. I hope this video has been helpful. Again, this is with the intent of love in my heart that I think everyone has a story to tell, but unfortunately only some will have the capability and the desire to see that story through. So I hope this video has been helpful. If you liked it, please do give it a like. And if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.